Katharina, you are back on Singletrack, and you are actually really close, which is really nice for me with organizing times and schedules and time zone differences because you're currently in Colorado and you're recovering from a massive race and a massive win at I don't know, Tour de
Oh,
Géants.
the Géants. Yes.
Tode Shots. You see, I can't even pronounce it. And if I try to, then I fall back into German. It's complicated. You ran tour, you won tour, you set a new course record. Congratulations. Amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So before we get into tour, what are you doing in Colorado?
I'm actually this time I'm on vacation.
Nice.
Yeah. No, I mean, tour is the end of my season. It was a wild season for me, so yeah. I'm now glad that I finally have some time, to just relax. Still enjoying the trails, but in a way more relaxed way. Just yeah, getting out every day, hiking and taking in the beautiful views. It's amazing right now with the leaves. Everything is super colorful. Yeah, but it's way more relaxed than when you're here for a race like hard rock in summer, and you have to train, you need to taper, and you have the stress of the race. So yeah, it's actually vacation.
This is amazing. I mean, you had never been in Colorado. You got to run Hard Rock. You fell in love with the place and you were like, "Oh, well, hold on. I got to go back there. I got to experience it." And I assume that being back there now is obviously not just for you because you don't have the stress of racing, but I mean, the town is sleepy, right? I mean, you're basically literally like by yourself
Yeah.
and amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, yeah, I honestly I wouldn't have thought that at the beginning of the year that I would come back within the same year. But yeah, I mean, when I was here for Hard Rock, yeah, I was just stunned how beautiful this place is, and the mountains and everything. And I mean, the sad thing about with Hard Rock was that actually, I mean, I was here a couple of weeks before, but I couldn't train due to my back injury, and so I basically only ran Hard Rock. So I missed being out of the on the trails, and then I was immediately like, I have to come back, not for the race, but just to see things and enjoy the trails and just be there. And yeah, I mean, now is the perfect time because it's super beautiful. It's no, there's no snow yet. I mean, we are super lucky with the weather right now. It's just amazing.
Mhm.
And also, yeah, in terms of my season, it's the end of the season. It's the time where I still like to move and still like to play a little bit on the trails, but not seriously training. Yeah, so it was the perfect timing to go here. And I mean, I anyways had to come to the US or Canada because I have a workshop at the end of October in Canada. So I was just like, I'm anyways flying across the big pond, so why not combine this with some vacation over here?
Like it. I like it. So for me as a German who lives over here in the US and thinks of the Alps as beautiful, you live in the Alps more or less, and you fell in love with the San Juans. No, I'm genuinely curious if you could put some words together. What makes these mountains so special for you? Because in some respects, it's so much more sparsely populated, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what we sort of understand. I mean, yeah, there are no gelato places. There are no huts
No.
serving Kaiserschmarrn, right? So, there's something else there and it caught you. And I'm curious if you could put that into
Yeah.
some words.
Yeah, so well, first of all, I love them both very much.
No,
I
for
love the
sure. I'm not
Alps
saying one is better
as
than the
well.
other, but
No,
just
definitely not. Um, I'm still surprised because they are similar in some ways, but then there is obviously the differences. And I mean, yeah, I mean here I think the biggest difference is it's so remote, as you
Mhm.
said. There's just not many people, and you in Switzerland, every second mountain has like a gondola going up where people just be lazy and go up the mountain, which is great for other aspects. But I think yeah, what's great here is that yeah, you're very much on your own, and you have the trails for your on your own, and that's just something that I really enjoy. I must say, when I train in the Alps, I usually try to train on mountains where there's not too many people,
Mhm.
because I just enjoy being on my own and in nature and with no one around me because, I still live in a city. I still see many people there when I'm at work, when I'm at home. So actually going to the mountains, I want to be on my own. I want to experience nature on my own. I don't want to be bothered that much by by
Mhm.
crowds. And so that's actually super nice here, and it feels way more like, actually going on an adventure, which for me is always a big part of trail running. So that's super cool. And then, yeah, I mean, mountains are some of the mountains are similar, but then there's some mountains we don't have them in the Alps. The
Mhm.
colors, how they look like, how the terrain is, how you get up there, how it feels like. I mean, yeah, obviously you have the altitude. That's a bit, well, I mean, when you get up high in the Alps, you are at altitude, but it's not nothing compared to here. And you still can go at high altitude without the snow and without having to actually do mountaineering, but
Mhm.
being able to run on trails, which is great. And yeah, I mean, I think it's also just nice to explore a new place. I mean, in the Alps, I mean, for sure, I don't know all parts of the Alps, but I think now in Switzerland, I know the Swiss Alps quite well, and I love them. I enjoy them. But here, it's actually cool to actually, yeah, explore new places and see new things. And I think now this week I realized I'm now here for almost 2 weeks, and I slowly, have that map in my head, and
Mhm.
every time I am on a different mountain, I somehow like, now I can add a piece of that map to my head, and now I start recognizing peaks and stuff like that, which is cool. So yeah, it's great, and yeah, but I definitely like both of these places.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's a good explanation and a good sort of perspective, right? Sometimes you need to go
Yeah,
to a place a couple times in order to really feel familiar. There's something weird about travel, right? One likes to travel in order to go to new and unfamiliar places, but then one also finds a lot of comfort in
yeah,
becoming familiar with them
yeah,
and sort of getting to know them, right? And if you
yeah,
do that too long, then you get bored with it, right? There's an interesting sort of
yeah,
a place that we put ourselves in order to explore and to adventure, but also to take vacation. So for you, let's go back to the off season. Um, your training and your races that you're doing are so long and so hard that you really need an off season. You're moving, you're doing stuff, but you are overall really allowing yourself to not focus on a training plan, to not focus
yeah.
on a goal. I'm not going to ask you what your goals for next year are. I'm allowing you to stay in this vacation mindset.
Thank you.
No, I won't. It is very, very tempting, and I don't know. Maybe I'll break it, my promise in 45 minutes. But right now, I'm letting you be be in this vacation mode and explore. So that's super fun. So we do have to pull you back though. Tour. We need to talk about it, and I think we should talk about it with starting with your decision to not run TDS because you had at some point mentally prepared yourself, practically prepared, you were on the starting list to say, okay, I'll do TDS as a training run for tour, which in itself sounds a little bit crazy, but you pulled out. Talk to me about what
Yeah.
your decision was to say, I'm putting all focus into TDS. I mean,
Yeah,
tour.
yeah, tour, exactly. Yeah, so the plan initially was to run both races, TDS and tour. I mean, last year, I've done the UTMB tour double, although obviously the tour was, well, I did not finish the tour, and that was actually a planned DNF because, a week after 100 miler, and especially a very competitive 100 miler, you probably don't want to run a 200 miler or even more than 200 miles. But last year was more like, I just wanted to see what's still possible. Only 1 week after the race, and I just wanted to, yeah, just also explore the race a bit, see what it's all about, how the trails are, how the people are, and I mean, it got me hooked immediately, which is why I wanted to come back this year and actually finish it. So then it was quickly clear to me that there would not be another UTMB Tour combo because again this year both races were only 1 week apart. Mm, but then with the TDS, well, I thought it's 4 more days or even a bit more than 4 more days. So it's definitely way more recovery. And I was already surprised last year how well I recovered actually, because my legs were not the issue in the race. It was just I was just still tired.
Hmm.
That was why I pulled out of the race ultimately, because I didn't want to dig myself, a super deep hole where I wouldn't come out for the next of well for the rest of autumn and winter. Um, so this year then I thought, well, TDS, well, obviously it's not a UTMB. It's shorter, it's less competitive. It is, well, time-wise, it's not that much shorter than UTMB because it's way more technical. But then it's also slower than UTMB. So I thought, well, it's a perfect training run for Tour because it is super technical. It is a very obviously longer than if I would do just a normal training run and preparing for Tour. But it was roughly like 10 to 11 days out, which is usually the day where I do the last really big run for a
Hmm.
race. So for
Hmm.
example, last year before UTMB, 10 days out, I did a 70K and I was perfect. I mean, obviously TDS is a bit more than 70K. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe I mean, yeah, in hindsight, obviously, well, there was other reasons now that forced me out of TDS. But in hindsight, well, maybe it was now for my tour, it was certainly better
Hmm.
to not have TDS. But I thought it would have. Yeah, I think I'm still convinced it would have worked out. But yeah, what ultimately caused me to pull out of TDS was my knee because yeah, I unfortunately had a couple of accidents this year. I think we may have talked already
Hmm.
in summer about that in the hard rock episode with my knee. And I mean, my knee was fine during hard rock and also afterwards, but then in the lead up to tour, unfortunately, it re-injured without any external stress or something. But it was just, yeah, we are not sure yet why it came back. But yeah, unfortunately, yeah, the car crash injury came back, so I had to stop training for a week or so, and it was well, we did some more treatment on the knee, but it was 2 weeks before TDS, and I well 2 weeks before TDS I basically couldn't run, so we thought like, oh well, maybe maybe TDS was actually it was soon clear that that wouldn't work out at all with the knee, because 2 weeks after that status quo, I would have just injured my knee further, and I would have probably not been able to finish TDS, and then obviously I wouldn't have been able to start tour.
Hmm.
So my physician, she was just like, okay, well, let's try this. You rest now a bit more. Your base is there. You had some training. You had a good season already. You did hard work, so there is some fitness is there. And the good thing for tour is, well, I mean, obviously you need to be fit, but you don't need the super specific, speed or something like that. So then she said, well, tour is still, we are not sure if this works out, but if you don't run TDS, then at least there is a chance to actually start tour.
Hmm.
So I thought, okay, well, in the end, well, I was always in my mind, I always thought if I would need to decide between TDS and tour, it would always have been tour.
Hmm.
And with the fact that it was 2 more weeks to recover, obviously the way longer race, but also the slower race, where I thought, okay, well, maybe, I can actually, well, a super high amount of descending as well. But yeah, I thought, well, this is, I mean, basically it was my only chance to do another race this year. So yeah, ultimately it was the knee, unfortunately, that forced me out of TDS. But yeah, well, in hindsight, it was probably good for my for my tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, how does this conversation go with your sponsors? Yeah, they are completely fine with that. Would they have wished for you to be at the starting line? How does this work for you from that angle? Obviously, they want to see you healthy, but is there a little
Yeah.
bit of a pressure there? Do you feel that?
Well, I mean, from the viewpoint of Hoka, obviously it would have been nice to have me at UTMB week running TDS, of course. I mean, Hoka is the main sponsor there, so for sure they would have been super happy to see me there. But luckily they are super understanding and super supporting. So, I mean, they knew my whole story through through the year, basically, with all these injuries and the comeback and stuff like that. And I was always super open with, the progress with the knee, what was happening, and with the communication. And I mean, yeah, when 2 weeks before TDS the knee was bad, and it was just obvious that if I would try to run TDS, I would neither finish TDS nor tour.
Hmm.
They also they were super supportive and understanding, and they were like, no, you do what makes most sense now, which is to rest more, don't run TDS, and then try Tour. So that's actually super nice that there was no pressure at all. I think if then it was only in my head that I was obviously knowing that for sure they would have preferred me seeing a TDS, but knowing that I would not have been able to finish TDS. So
Hmm.
that's also not, well,
Yeah.
nobody has something, get something out of that. Yeah, so that was, in the end, it was no question.
Hmm.
And there was still the same support, and yeah, I
Hmm.
didn't feel like they were, disappointed or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm always curious how these relationships sort of work, right? Because you are on your own. It's not like a sports team that can, potentially balance. If one person is injured, you bring another person in, right?
Yeah.
It's only you and it's only your body, and it's sort of, yeah, it's all or nothing, right? You either
Yep.
able to achieve it or you're not. And I think we in the media, we sometimes make that mistake that we sort of treat you like a brand, like an item that's just supposed to work based on previous year's
Yeah.
statistics, right? And we look at you and like, you should be doing this, and you're like, yeah, well, the body doesn't work that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes the head doesn't work that way, right?
And I mean, you can't force it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not working, it's not working. And I knew that TDS was impossible.
Yeah.
There was no discussion, because there was just not enough time for the knee to heal up in that 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Not even speak about training. So yeah, it was just clear to me that it was not a good idea at all. And I mean, you can force yourself to some degree, especially in a race. You can run with pain and everything. But for me, I mean, I'm still young. I still want to run for the next, I don't know, 20, 30 years. So it's also about sustainability to, don't harm yourself in the long term. And I mean, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm super surprised that I could run Tour and finish Tour because, well, on that day when I sat in there with my physician, I was just like, I don't see how I can run a 3:30K race in 4 weeks with that knee right now. So that was also super cool to see that it worked out in the end. I mean, to be honest, my knee is not 100% good now, and we are considering now that I still need to do surgery
Okay.
in a couple of weeks, and just to prevent re-injuring it in winter and in the next season. But yeah, I mean, it was actually well, obviously it was not an easy decision because that was not the plan. And obviously I was bummed that
Mm-hmm.
once more that knee was just not good, and without another accident, it was just coming back. But yeah, it was simple because it was just, it wouldn't have worked with TDS. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, that makes sense. So let's talk about tour. So you made the right decisions. You feel prepared. You spent some time in Chamonix, so you kind of, and you've obviously been in Chamonix before, so you know the madness. Tour is very different, right? I mean, everything is smaller. But it's not hard rock small, right? I mean, it's
No,
not
Thor is actually
150
quite
people.
surprisingly big.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are over 1,000 runners at the starting line, right? So it's small compared to UTMB, but it is still a massive event. So you're at the starting line. Let's talk about your race. Uh, how's your knee? How's everything else? And I mean, I've got so many questions. Why don't you kind of like lead us into your race, and then we'll touch on some of the things.
Yeah. Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I did not feel well prepared at all because I had well, it was UTMB week, which was, obviously super cool to be there. Also, well, not running, but it was stressful. I mean, a lot of meetings and media stuff going on. And then I had another week at home where I had to work while simultaneously preparing tour.
Yeah.
So it was a bit like, oh, I actually arrived at Courmayeur 2 days before the race and I felt tired. And I thought, oh, this is maybe it's maybe not ideal before a race like that. And I felt a bit drained also, to be honest,
Hmm.
just because the week it was so stressful. And then there was always the worries with the knee, for how long would the knee keep up during the race? When would the struggles begin? Would I be able to finish it all? What was coming up? How would I be able to sleep? Everything was there. And yeah, it was just it was just a lot of stress, I think, I put on myself, and I realized that luckily. So I think the day before the race, I finally, I calmed down a bit, and I knew, or I thought that, as soon as the race was starting, I would feel better, because then finally we would just go. It would be easy. I
Mhm.
wouldn't need to prepare anything anymore. I would just, it was a simple task, um, from then. So yeah, but with the knee, it was just, that was such a big uncertainty, that I honestly was not sure what to expect.
Yeah.
And also which issues to expect. And I mean, for me, it was clear that after 30 hours, it would be something new, because I've never run more than 30 hours before. So there was a lot of uncertainties, which to some degree helped, because I was just like, okay, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I just have to start, and then I will see.
Hmm.
So to some degree, that was freeing, almost. But yeah, I mean, I was super glad when finally we could finally start the run, because yeah, obviously you are nervous before every race, and then there's all the people and interviews and stuff, and you're just like, okay, just let us go, just want to be running on our own in the mountains. And I talked with other athletes, and they were all the same. They were just like, oh, just let us go.
Hmm.
Because you're preparing for a race, but basically for 3 days you're almost, well, if you are in the front and not in the main pack, you're on your own for a super long time. So
Hmm.
being stuck in Courmayeur with thousands of runners and all this hubbub going on, you're just like, okay, just let us go.
Yeah.
So yeah, and finally when it started, yeah, I felt a lot better afterwards. So that was
Yeah,
good.
yeah, when you actually can focus on what you love doing,
Yeah,
what it is that you love about the sport, which is moving through the mountains, right? Then things start
exactly.
coming together. Tell me a little bit about the preparation for you. An event like Tour, so many hours out. Do you have baggies prepared with calories for every hour? I mean, trying to, mathematically put this
Yeah.
out, that is like, it feels like a 6 weeks amount of work. Like, how do you prepare the practical pieces, the drop bags and all of this, or for an event that long?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a bit more challenging because there's so many more aid stations. And then, I mean, luckily this year I had a crew,
Hmm.
which was super cool. But then, well, when you have a crew, actually you need to prepare more. Because last year I just had that, you have this tour bag, which is transported to the life spaces where you just put in everything you might need. So I just put in everything I had, and then the bag was traveling, and I didn't need to think about what to tell my crew, what to hand my crew, what should I tell me, whatever. So that was a bit more work this time, and obviously they wanted some time estimate to know when
Yeah.
they would need to be there, and I was just like, guys, I'm sorry, but it's like plus minus 10 hours basically,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I just don't know. And I mean, the first half of the course I knew, but the second half I didn't. So that was challenging. I did not what I Well, I did not prepare my nutrition meticulously. The only thing I prepared was my liquid calories, and then I just gave my crew, I gave them a bunch of food items, such that I would have something to choose from. The good thing is also with Tor is that they've a lot of aid stations, and they're super well stocked. So there is a big variety, of food. So I thought it just, anyways, because the plan was to not rely so much on gels and stuff like usual, but more eat actually real food. I just thought, okay, I will just eat whatever seems possible to eat at that moment. And actually that strategy worked quite well. So I didn't plan too much in terms of nutrition. I didn't calculate anything or something. It Yeah, I just made sure that there was enough food and that there was enough variety. What I did plan more was stuff like, having all the clothes there, because I
Hmm.
knew the first day and night would be super wet and cold. I had like a couple of extra pairs of shoes to switch to. Then I had stuff like some new things, like for example, I'm wearing contacts, and I struggled with my vision doing hard work. So
Hmm.
I thought like, well, I want to make sure that that does not happen during tour. So I had my eye drops with me all the time. But then also during the nights, I switched actually to my normal glasses, to give
Hmm.
my eyes some rest from the contacts, stuff like that. I had, bringing a sleeping bag for sleeping in the night. I'm having my toothbrush with me because you don't want to run for 4 days without brushing your teeth. It's disgusting. So stuff like that. And you don't do that for a normal race, and you
Yeah.
also do that for a race like UTMB. But yeah, many more things to think of, and telling my crew what they should remind me of, just to avoid mistakes and avoid problems to occur. Because
Mhm.
the longer the race, obviously, the more problems can occur. Stuff like anti-chafing cream and stuff like that. Just make sure that you consistently are on top of things, and that required a lot of planning. But in the
Mhm.
end, I mean, I was fortunate that I had a super super good crew. And then they also experienced and runners themselves, so they knew what to do. They knew what to expect. They also knew in which condition I might arrive and
Yeah.
what to tell me and what not. So yeah, that worked out super well in the end. I was super glad to have them there. But yeah, obviously it involved some preparation.
Hmm. And it is a little bit of a different race that you don't have to pit stop it as much. Like at UTMB,
Yeah,
it's so highly competitive. Every
definitely not.
minute counts, right? And so
Yeah,
sort of the water bottles, everything needs to be filled, everything needs to
yeah,
be on point for the top riders. You don't want to waste any time. But with such a race for such a long time, spending a few extra minutes at an life base, right, getting things right before you get
yeah.
back out there can make a huge difference and will not break the race or you lose immediately positions right away, right?
No, definitely not. I mean, in hindsight, you think like, oh my goodness, I spent so much time in the aid stations. I could have been easily an hour faster because I spend usually like up to 5, 6, 7 minutes more than I would have maybe needed. But then you think like, well, but maybe that was the time that was needed, because all these aid stations, especially the crude ones, it's always a brief reset. I mean, the non-crude ones, usually I just grabbed my water, grabbed some food, and I was off. So that was that pit
Hmm.
stop. But then when I saw my crew, usually, I mean, I don't sit down in a race. I
Hmm.
the first time I did that was during hard rock, because I was so low with my fueling and everything. I had to sit down. But normally I don't do that. But in that race, actually you sit down, you take the time, you properly fuel yourself, you eat as much as possible, you drink as much as possible. And when you think, oh, I could go now, then you eat some more because you will need it. Then maybe you change clothes, even if you would not necessarily need to change clothes. But this is a race where you need to think ahead.
Hmm.
You still want to feel good in 10 hours and not only in the next hour. And just yeah, taking your time and really just thinking about all the stuff that could happen that you can prevent with some well, yeah, just taking your time and going through your list um of things to do. That I think that in hindsight is super important. And I'm actually not sure if I would have cut off those 3 to 5 minutes at every aid station, if I would have been actually faster in the end.
Yeah.
Because it's like this, it's a great reset, and then you exit the aid station, you do a little hobble run because your feet hurt and everything. But
Hmm.
after 5 minutes, you're back and you're in moving, and because you fueled well, you maybe have changed your clothes, maybe you have that brief talk with your crew. You feel actually super refreshed. It was
Hmm.
always like this. Yeah, it was always quite a break actually. And then you feel good to continue, and so that's I think that's the beauty, as part of the beauty of this race, is that you can take your time, and it's not even that you in the end you lose a lot of time. It's just you need to look after yourself. That's the number one goal in that race. Because as soon as you have major problems, it gets so hard. It's so hard to finish because the race is so long and so hard. So
Yeah.
yeah, really, really, really make sure that you check all the boxes, and maybe eat more than usual, or yeah, maybe change one more time. But yeah, just avoid making major mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it also gives you a mental reset, right? I mean, being able
Yeah,
to eat real
absolutely.
food, be able to sit down, it makes you feel like a human again in some respects, right? Sometimes I feel when I'm out, especially by myself, there's no other runners around, and I'm going for a really long stretch, you sort of feel like, I don't know, robot isn't really the right term, but you feel you feel disconnected to your
Yeah,
soul or something. I don't know how to
yeah,
describe it, right? And
yeah. It's more
talking to
like you're a
people,
machine.
yeah, it is a little bit like that, right? And being able to yeah, feel like you're doing some normal tasks, breaks you out of this like, oh, this movement that is so monotonous sometimes, right? So that really helps. So tour is somewhat less competitive. So you go in this event as without the stress of wanting to elbow for positions, right? I mean, I don't know how tour is the start is just as crazy as UTMB, like people go out at 6 minutes a mile, or I mean, you know, I mean, you go out there to have an adventure in the mountains, the way you always describe it. How do you look at it from a competitive point of view, from a race point of view? Do you ever talk to your crew and say, hey, where I'm positioned? How much time do I have? Can I catch this person? Like, speak to me. Is with such a long race, is such a long event, um, that requires so much more different handling. Do you think about it as a race too?
Yeah, well, so Tour is, well, definitely, yeah, it's a small elite field. Um, it's it's definitely not comparable with something like UTMB or the big races. Still within that small elite field, it is quite competitive, which is nice. But yeah, the thing with Tour as a competition is, well, you actually, well, that's my opinion, but you shouldn't race in the first 3 days. When you want to make
Yeah.
sure that you finish well, you shouldn't race too early because it's actually interesting because I heard that afterwards from other people because they saw me on the first day and they were like, well, you were relaxed and doing your thing, but behind you, people were actually the women were already fighting and battling themselves on the very first day, and what
Mhm.
resulted there was that maybe they wouldn't even take their time at the aid stations because they were already battling for positions. And to be honest, it's a bit ridiculous because it's the first day and it's such a long race. And on the first day, you're nowhere, literally nowhere.
Yeah.
And even on the second day, you are far from halfway point until the evening. So I think, and that was my approach to the race was, my main and sole goal, to be honest, was to finish the race because last year I couldn't finish. And it's such a long race. It's so hard that finishing itself is, I think, already such a huge achievement. So for me, that was the first and main goal. And yes, I had a time goal in mind. I was like, okay, when the race goes well, when I actually get to the point where I'm like, I can't finish now, then I can think about the time goal as well. But especially with my knee and everything, I was so uncertain if I could finish at all. So that I think that calmed me down quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, yes, then the approach was just to play it safely and just run my own race because that's what I can control. I can't control what the others do. I
Mhm.
cannot. I will never be able to do that. And yeah, I mean, you know, as soon as people start going to sleep in the second and third night, that it's like a washing machine because we saw that in the men's race, there were people that had to sleep early in the race for quite a long time because they were not feeling well. But then they were just rushing through the race, and then they eventually even made it to the podium.
Mhm.
So there is this, your position on the first and second day it absolutely tells nothing about the outcome of a race, and especially on the women's side, many of the women dropped on the first or second day because I think they just raced. They already raced. They were
Mhm.
competing, but
Mhm.
it doesn't make sense for me to compete so early in a race where it's just about because you just well for me it was all about getting to that well first of all getting to the 200K because then you can wrap your head around the remaining 130 and then still getting to that 300K. And for me it was always like, okay, when I'm at the 300K then I'm allowed to think about the finish.
Mhm.
I'm not allowed to think about it before because it will only mess with me. And so yeah, I mean that's nothing new for me. I usually do that, but also especially for tour I told my crew, don't tell me anything. Well, don't tell me where I am. That didn't work because everybody told me, of course, that I was in front,
Yeah, yeah,
which is not necessarily something I like. But in this case, I didn't bother because I was just like, it's the first day, it's the second day. There's so much still to do. Okay, everything can happen, so
yeah.
it didn't bother me that much. But what is very important for me is that they didn't tell me where the others were because
Mhm.
I can't do something about that anyways. I can only yeah, I can only change what I do. I can only affect that, but what the others do, I can't control that. But when they tell me they are there and there, what it does is probably it stresses me. It messes with my head. It's probably inducing something negative. So for me, the easiest is to just not know where they
Mhm.
are because I have to do my own race anyways. So that again, and I do that for every race, but this race, it worked super well. I mean, to be honest, I think on the third day, they told me that the gap to second place was huge. They didn't tell me how big the gap was, but they told me that this huge gap, um, and that if nothing major would happen, that I would win. But still, then I didn't allow myself to think of actually winning because, as I said, only 30K to the finish. I actually allowed myself to think of that finish because you need to fall or I mean I had some issues coming up during the race and I was just like, okay, this is serious. This could be the end of my race. For example, on the beginning of the third day, I had super quickly it happened that I had some inflammation on my shin muscle, and it hurt a lot on the downhills, and I just couldn't run the downhills anymore, and I was just, wow. If I mean, it's 150K to go. This is way too early for having a serious issue. And then luckily we could fix it a bit with tape, and it got better. But stuff like that, I mean, it can happen all the time, right? So you shouldn't get too excited with racing each other and just, I think this race is just about being smart. And I
Mhm.
don't know if I don't want to say that I did the smartest thing, but I think it's just worth it to just focus on your own and focus on all these smart parts, which is eating well, changing when needed, changing your shoes when needed, taking that extra bit of rest, ticking all the boxes, thinking about what may happen, not right now, but in the next, I don't know, 2, 3 hours until I see my crew again. And just yeah, just trying to play it safely and
Yeah.
looking after yourself.
I mean, it's such a fascinating story because the sport in some respects is, especially super long distances, is still so new, and so it's very hard to really compare and figure out as good strategy how one approaches an event like that, right? I mean,
Mm,
most people like you yourself, you're not going to run tour consistently now over the next 15 years and every year, right? And
mm,
even if you would, there are different life events that have an effect on it. So it will be very hard to really compare and saying this is how you improve a specific performance because there's so many factors that come in, right?
mm.
Obviously, everything worked for you, and even um, in that you deal with problems and you improve, you try to fix them along the way, and you didn't even get into the race completely fit and completely dialed well, and still you come out with a course record and a first place, which is incredible and crazy to sort of wrap your head around that this is possible. um I don't know. That's just a statement that I'm trying. I'm
Yeah,
observing as I'm listening to you describe this, your race, because it's such a fascinating thing because our sport is so much about problem solving as you
yeah,
get along, right? You're not like trying to have everything perfectly prepared because we don't have enough data yet to even get to this place, right? And only if you're in this absolute perfect place, then sort of like a marble, you roll it down the perfectly prepared track, and that's how we ensure that you're going to be the fastest at the finish, right? It is throughout each step, each hour, each aid station, each little tweak that our body sort of experiences, right? We make adjustments along the fly, and the end result can either mean a complete blow up or it means you come in first, which is just crazy.
yeah. I mean, no one will get through a race like Tour without issues.
Yeah.
It's just it's impossible. It's part of the game, and I mean, it's also that's cool. That's what our sport is all about, and especially these super long races. And so it is all about problem solving, and it is about solving the small problems, and it is about avoiding the bigger problems, and
Hmm.
actually thinking ahead because maybe I don't have a problem yet, but I could encounter it in like 10 hours if I don't do something about it yet. Looking after my feet, looking after possible, stuff like chafing, stuff like under fueling. Right now I might not feel super hungry or depleted, but if I don't eat now, I might be depleted in 5 hours, and then that might have a significant impact on my race and my performance. So it really, and then, well, as soon as the problems are there, is, well, how do you deal with them? How much do you let them affect you and your mindset and everything? I mean, only 24 hours into the race, my feet, they were just so painful. I've never had that before, and I was just, well, it was way too early. There was so much more time to go, and I felt for a moment, I felt how it affected me, because I started to doubt, because I was just like, how on earth should I finish that race with feet like that? But then, yeah, then it's all about how to deal with that, how to motivate yourself again, how to draw maybe energy from your surroundings, that keep you going, and how to distract yourself, your mind. So I think that's super cool, especially with these long races, as this part gets more and more important. And then also, with the sleep, I mean, that's a big thing in tour. At some point, you will be sleep deprived.
Hmm.
It's just how it is. And then dealing with that, and dealing with how you feel with that, and trying to sleep and trying to stay awake and stuff like that. It's such a mental game. But I really like that, to be honest, because it's a different type of challenge. Obviously, there is the physical challenge. It's always there. It's still a super hard race. But what I realized with Tour was, as long as I was fueling properly, and doing all the care work and taking care of myself, the legs were fine. My
Yeah.
legs were almost never an issue, apart from, these muscle things and maybe the knee in the end. So the legs were fine. The physical component was fine. It was always the head, where it's just like, okay, I need to solve my problems. I need to keep that positive mindset. And if the mindset is not positive anymore, how do I get back to it? And I had it very early in the race, actually, on the morning of the second day. I had quite a mental low, because I needed to switch my mind from, okay, this is a 100-mile race, to, oh, I need to allow myself to run actually more than 100 miles, way more than 100 miles, and keep going for way longer. And I needed to find that switch, and that was hard. But as soon as I found it, I was just like, okay, now we can continue. Now we can explore also this new area, which I didn't know before, with, sleep deprivation and stuff like that. So yeah, I think for me it's a beautiful part of the race. Obviously, it's hard. The whole race is super hard, but at the same time, yeah, it allows you to grow in some way. And I mean, especially with this race, I realized during the race how much energy I could actually draw just from my surroundings, because it's so beautiful. And on the third and fourth day, you are there, you're moving, you're just like, how is this possible? I'm still moving not too bad, I'm still having fun, it's still super beautiful. And I think, well, at least for me, that gives me so much energy and motivation. Of course, it doesn't take away all my problems, as of course my feet still hurt. Of course, well, I'm still tired. It won't change that. But it gives me that extra, positive energy for my mindset. And I think, yeah, that's maybe then when it's decided if you will have a good race or not, is how well you can deal with all these things, and how well you manage to actually stay in a positive mindset, and how long can you preserve that feeling of, oh, this is actually fun? Because for me, I must say, the second part of the race, I enjoyed it more. Although I was struggling more, I was way more tired. I hurt more. I was slower, but still, I was enjoying it so very much. And I mean, this is for all of my races. I always tell myself, as long as I have fun, as long as I enjoy it, I know I can do well, and I know I will, see the finish line.
Yeah.
As soon as I don't have fun anymore, what's the point? So yeah, just keeping that mindset, and truly enjoying it. And I mean, I must say, I enjoyed it so much. It was super super cool for me. And yeah, that ultimately, I think that was what was then enabling me to have such a great result in the end. It was, I don't know if it was, well, obviously, physically I was not in a bad place. I was moving well most of the time, but yeah, I think just the ability to manage everything, which has nothing to do solely with your running or your legs. Yeah, that will decide ultimately how well you perform.
And not just that, I also think that's the deciding factor if somebody's not just has a good race, but also is a good runner or not. Because I mean, we've talked now a couple times, um, podcast and not, and hearing you describe how you're problem solving and what you're focusing on, I think that is really the key to your success. Of course, you still need to move. Of course, you still need to have that physical strength, and that's what you're training. But
Mm,
I think that's the born with talent in a sense, because you might have a physical coach, you might have a plan that sets you out in order to get faster and stronger and to endure more, but you
mm,
don't really, question mark, I assume, not have a mental coach, right? You're not sitting down with somebody and saying, how do I get to this place? How do I break out of adultery? How do I shift my mindset? But what you're describing throughout, what makes the difference is exactly that mental thing, right? I mean,
yeah,
in some respects, you would think runners who are trying to improve their running, they shouldn't look for a sports coach. They should look for a mental coach. They
mm,
should look for somebody who can help them rewire their brain in how to in to get to this place where when things get hard in life in a race, how do you sort of break through and still enjoy this and focus on the things of why you're doing what you're doing, why you
yeah.
set out, right? Because you described that's the difference maker, right? But we don't actually focus as racists. We don't really focus on working on that. We just hope that we have it.
Yeah, I mean, especially for these longer races, that's ultimately becoming so much more important. But yeah, I think in the end, what it really is yeah, knowing what's your why. Why are
Hmm.
you doing this? Um, and you should not doing this to win,
Hmm.
because if this is your why, you will not win, and you will probably not perform well, and you will probably not even see the finish line. So and that was something I also thought about the days leading up to the race. I was just when I also felt not super well. I took my time and was just like, okay, what is your why? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to do that? Um, and I think just making sure that it is there, that I can actually in a tough moment I can yeah, I have my why there. I can tell myself why I'm doing this. That was so helpful. And yeah, I think yeah, it really comes down to what is your why. And I mean, for me, my why is never I want to win, I want to perform, I want to set the fastest time. I don't know. That's not my why. Because
Hmm.
my why is to go out there and have the best possible adventure because I love doing it. And that's my why. I fucking love doing these races. But it's yeah, this is and this is what ultimately brings me the joy, which then again probably leads to success, not necessarily. Um, but yeah, I think really having a strong why, which is always there and which you can always rely on when you're not feeling well, it's yeah, that's key. Absolutely.
So it is interesting though, because if you could say if the competition, the winning isn't a thing, then you could be a mountaineer, right? You could go on adventures by yourself.
Yeah.
What draws you then to trail races where the element of competition and placement and medals and a specific starting line with everyone else, the hubbub, right, comes back in, which is something that you say is not the main motivator. So what
Mm.
is it? Because yeah, I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I still love some good competition.
Mhm.
It's well, this is always yeah. I mean, I love having a race like UTMB where just super competitive, where you have the best athlete there. This is surely a motivation for me, but it is definitely not the only motivation, and it is also not my main motivation. Because I never forced that career. It was never the plan actually to be a pro runner, if you want to call me like that, one day. It happened by accident because well somehow I realized well I can push myself, maybe I have some talent, and I seem to do well, so that happened to me, but it was never my plan, which is I think a healthy form of growing because also I'm not dependent on that. I still very much, and that's also one reason why I do tour and not UTMB, right? Is because I have this other goal, which is to actually go on an adventure and challenge myself, not necessarily in a super competitive field.
Hmm.
But the cool thing is about these races, especially about tours, it allows you to really focus on that challenge of pushing yourself, because you have all these aid stations, you have all the safety net that in case something happens, you have a tracker, they will see you, they will find you, which is super cool because when you do adventures on your own, there's a lot more planning involved, and ultimately you won't be able to fully focus on that adventure and on that challenge. So I think that's a cool point. And then what else? I mean, what for sure. I mean, I do these races because I love running in the mountains on my own. I love to be there on my own for a long time. And I mean, a tour basically after 20K, I was running on my own for like, I don't know, 72 hours,
Yeah.
um, which was super cool. And I enjoyed that a lot. But still, then I think having a crew there and also seeing the people from every now and then at the aid stations made it still so much more enjoyable because
Hmm.
you have this interaction and then you have the athletes after the race. I mean, that's a, I mean, that's something super cool. You can just talk about your race and they tell you about their race and you can relate to them. And it's so much easier because I mean, I love doing projects on my own as well, but then I come home, I have this experience, but I can't tell people about it, but they won't understand
Hmm.
because they haven't done it. Because it was a solo project. But with this race, I mean, everybody there has their solo race, but still we all have a similar experience. We all run the same course, and in the end, we can come together and discuss about it and talk about it, exchange, which is super fun. And I mean, yeah, having my crew there, I was always super much looking forward to see them because they just gave me some more joy and it was just refreshing, and I still could share something with them, although it was very much my own solo race. So I think that's for me, that's a super nice balance. And yeah, just the whole infrastructure, so to say, around the race, it really allows you to focus on just being there, doing your thing, enjoying everything, and not needing to worry about, oh, where do I get food, where do I get water, where can I sleep. Um, yeah, so that's I think, yeah, it's for me it's a good mix. And yeah, as I said, I mean, I and I would love to go back to events like UTMB just to test myself and just to see where I am at. And because I super like this super competitive field, not so much because I want to win or I want to compare myself with the others, but for me it's more it's just super motivating
Hmm.
when I see, wow, there's a super strong women's field, this is amazing. And obviously I want to do well, but in the end, even if I don't do it, but there is some great achievements by the other women, that's great.
Hmm.
Because in the end, it motivates, hopefully it motivates many other women to start running or to just be active. And so yeah, I certainly like that as well, but it is definitely not my main motivation to do these things.
I love though because I think you're describing the heart of what trail racing is all about. And you're describing it as a sort of a personal experience and a personal journey into you doing what you're doing. But trail running is still a new sport. The German Alpine Club doesn't even recognize it yet as sort of an official activity, right? They've adopted mountain biking and climbing in gyms, but trail running is sort of something that they don't really know what to do with, right? So it is such a new sport, and people don't really know why they don't know their why yet, or
Mm,
society doesn't really know the why, and we just think there's so many wrong assumptions about it, but it comes down to this personal adventure in a collective communal setting that is adventure, but it is reasonably safe.
hmm
Like you're not, having to worry about crampons and ice axes and stuff, right? And therefore, that doesn't make you a chicken and you don't want to be on the hardest mountain in the fastest possible way. It allows you to focus on a different experience, discovering something else about yourself and discovering the place that you're running in a different way. And there's something really, really unique and special because our sport is just so new. We haven't really, right? I mean, mountaineers have for over 100 years chased up mountains and gotten there the first, and then went and did long talks about what mountaineering is and what that does to people. And there is sort of a defined thing. I'm a mountain climber, right? We as trail runners, we haven't really defined that yet in our society. And I think your whole point about knowing your why, I think that gets to that heart of it. And I'm fascinated by that as you as an individual and we sort of collectively are exploring that, because we end up signing up for these events and pushing ourselves and experience something amazing.
Yeah,
And
and I mean, you know, the nice thing is that well, it's such a broad field. You get, you know, if you want, you can do the super short trail races, which are super crazy competitive, where it's all about the competition, about winning. And then there is, well, the other end of the spectrum, which is something like, I don't know, Tour de Glacier or even longer races, where it's a true adventure, and where bad stuff can happen, although it is still a race. And then there's everything in between. You know,
mhm,
all the distances, all the different types of terrain, all the different types of competitiveness. But I think that's part of the beauty that and of our sport. And you have all types of people there at the starting line. You have the super competitive people, the pros that battle for a win, and then you have the mid of the pack, and then you have the back of the pack, and they are just there to, you know, challenge themselves or have a good time on the mountain or whatever. And I think we don't necessarily need to get up to a point where we say like, oh, that's who we are,
mhm,
because for everybody does that for a different reason. I mean, there is people who actually say, well, you know, I'm an elite athlete. I do this for the competition. I love the competition. I don't care about, you know, if this is a nice race or not, if this is a nice landscape or not. I just want to race, and that's cool because we have these types of races. And then there's the other type of people where it's just like, I just want to be in the mountains, but I don't want to be on my own. I don't want to, you know, need to plan a lot. I still want to have an adventure. I still want to challenge myself, but in, you know, a more or less safe environment. So I think that's super cool, and I really hope that we will keep that variety for the for the next decades of the sport, and that we don't well yeah that there's no sense of we need to agree that we are something specific, but
mhm.
because yeah, it's great because it's open to everyone. And I think, yeah, as long as you are having fun running on mountain trails, you will find those races where that you want to run. And even if you don't want to race, I mean, you still can go out and do your thing, and you don't require something specific to do trail running. And yeah, I think that makes it so, yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. No, I think that is exactly the heart of it. And there too many locations, too many races, too many trails that I don't think we will ever get this completely locked in that trail running is only that one distance, that
Yeah.
one type of competition, right? It will never, it will always stay open, and there will always be somebody who gets an idea of like, hey, maybe we connect these few mountains through those trails. Let's make it a race, right? And people
Yeah.
will sign up for it, which is exciting. So
Yeah.
that brings us now to the future. You said surgery is coming up, vacation is happening, you'll have some downtime. Enjoy it. You deserve it.
Thank you.
Without asking what 2025 is going to bring for you, you've had a challenging and incredibly successful 2024. So it was sort of a weird mixed bag, right? I mean,
Definitely, yes.
you were signed up for your dream events and then physically had to constantly worry about if you could even be at the start line, right?
Yeah.
What these having had these experiences, how has that changed you in your outlook of what you want to do and what you want to grow into in this sport?
Yeah, that's a super good question. Because yeah, I mean, this year was just a wild ride, to be honest. I mean,
Right?
looking at it from hindsight now, I mean, it still surprises me that I could run 4 races, and 3 of them went pretty well. I mean, the first one, Transvolcania, was more just to get in back into running. And I mean, even there I was super happy because everything was holding up, and I was just like, okay, I'm back in the mix. And running races like, well, running and finishing both half and tour in a year where I was in the beginning thought, well, I don't know if I can run at all. That was super cool. And I mean, even in between the races, I always struggled. I had well, then before hard rock, I had the other crash, and then just now with the tour and all the uncertainty before, it was never a smooth ride. But still being able to have these experiences and super cool races, I'm super grateful for that. And I mean, yeah, now it is a pity that still the knee is not fine, and yeah, I'm not sure how long it will take for it to be well, but I think, yeah, just the experience of, okay, going into a year, be feeling like super unprepared because I couldn't train. I lost a lot of training time due to all the different accidents, but yeah, just seeing what I could still make out of it and how much actually the mindset played a role in this. And yeah, I mean, how much I still wasn't able to enjoy all these adventures. Yeah, that's something super cool to see, and it makes me very optimistic for the next few years. And yeah, I mean, well, what right now, what I'm thinking most about is, I think, just to how to handle, well, yeah, my work everyday life with the running, because I mean, I still work a 70% job, and I realized this year, especially with all the accidents and mental stress going on, that it was quite a stretch. Still working that much or trying to work that much, and then also come all the comebacks and then the races themselves, and so I think that's more like where I'm right now at the moment, thinking about, okay, maybe I need to do some changes, maybe I want to do some changes, maybe I want to try to become a bit more professional. And well, I have to see how I can combine that with my work, because I think I still want to have something else um that keeps me busy, that is something completely different, especially in the winter months. I don't train fully in the winter months, and especially not in off season, so I'm glad to have something completely else there. But yeah, that's more stuff like that. But I think in terms of running, it made me, like, this year, I think, made me just super excited for the next, well, I don't know, 10 years. Um, just because I also, just because I was able to explore new races, new places, where I just like, oh, I would really like to come back to that race and see what I still can do there. And if it is not next year, well, then maybe the year after or in 3 years. And um, yeah, I think I just realized, because after last year I thought, oh well, now I had all this success and people expect me to do, even better or faster UTB or whatever. And this year was more like an adventure year, I think, because I did yeah, most of the races were a bit more adventurous. But also I realized again that these are the races I'm really drawn to and that I really love and like. And yeah, just now knowing that I'm still quite young in terms of ultra runner age,
Mhm.
luckily. So just knowing that there is hopefully a lot of many years ahead where I can still do this, and where I still can continue to challenge myself and keep exploring, that makes me just super excited. And I think after this year, I don't feel that much pressure as after last year, which is also super nice.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I would love to keep my yeah, I mean, I would love, and I have to keep my joy, as like that's the biggest priority. I always want to enjoy it. And yeah, I think I'm on a good way to achieve that.
I I think we danced around and we won't go there. And I think it was good to talk about the motivation of running and racing and the growth opportunities and this. And I think I like this place to to I like to be in this place and stay there and finish it as off that way, because as we said, in the at the beginning, this whole question about, well, what's next is so wide open and it's so complicated
Mm,
and there's so many factors. And I bet you as pro athletes get so bored by it because there's so many factors. How do you
yes.
lock yourself down and focus? And I think you explained it without putting labels on it, with the kind of races that motivate you, the kind of locations that you seek out and want to adventure in, right? That I
Mm,
think there will always be opportunities for you, and there will always be um, moments that excite you and spark
yeah.
this and will get you out. So I think we'll leave it at this. Katharina, I so appreciate you taking the time and taking sort of a deep dive into your season and into an experience of tour for folks who want to learn and a little bit more about the day-to-day and moment-to-moment experience. Katharina wrote a really good summary in stages on Instagram of like how each day sort of went and the different challenges with the weather and sleep deprivation and everything else. So people should go and check that out. Any final thoughts? What else is on your vacation list in the next couple days? What else? What else do you need to check off before reality hits back?
Oh, I think I just well, I practice myself in in recovering and relaxing, which I realize that I don't really do that very often, and I should probably do this more often. I think right now is the perfect time for that. But I mean, I'm just looking forward to enjoy some more of the trails here, and I mean, enjoy the weather as long as it lasts, because right now it's just it's amazing, and just unwinding and getting away from a challenging year,
Yeah,
and getting just trying to regain some energy for the next year, and for the winter, and I'm just now I'm just really practicing being relaxed, and
fantastic.
actually for once, and not not being in such a strict schedule of training and working and
Yeah.
everything.
Do you jump on skis? So many Europeans do ski mountaineering. Is that something that you do?
Yeah, I just started it last year.
Mhm.
I'm not the best skier, but I get down.
I mean, you live
I
in
really
Switzerland.
I'm
You have to.
yeah, and I mean, I must say I really enjoyed it. I mean, the apple is great. It's perfect. It's great training. It's fun. I enjoyed it. It's it allows you to be out there in the mountains when you can't run on trails. So I definitely want to continue that. Now, I mean, this year I will need to see with the knee.
Sure.
Probably it's
Mm,
not possible, but it's a great alternative in winter, and many trail runners do it because that's the way how you get the climbing in, right? No, it is it is super nice, and I mean I can do it at home. I mean I don't live directly in the mountains, but I can go there very early in the morning. I can get in a nice 4 or 5 hour session, and I can back and even put in a full work day
mhm.
afterwards. So no, that's super great, and I'm always happy. I mean, I like the alternatives. I also cycle a lot. I swim a lot. That keeps it interesting, the training at least.
Yeah,
So yeah,
fantastic. Super. Katharina, thank you so much for coming back on Singletrack. Have a great winter. Have a great time off.
thank you very much.